Some time ago, I said that The Calling, Las Vegas would become one of the defining moments for Flesh and Blood as a game. Long plagued with accusations of not being a real game with a real player base, or perhaps just being a fad, this first American tournament of 2021, plus the premiere of their newest set, Tales of Aria, would either confirm or disprove that accusation. It is my belief that if we saw an underwhelming crowd at this event, or just saw people showing up to play games like Magic the Gathering and Pokemon, well, that would mean that Flesh and Blood was a fad, a game that was surviving on speculation and imagination, and that could not muster actual attendance when it came to the reality of getting butts in seats to sit down, shuffle up, and play the game. But I also speculated that the reverse would also be noteworthy, that a robust crowd or large attendance would disprove, once and for all, claims of there being just a fad, that this was, in fact, a legitimate game with a committed player base who were going to see it through years to come. In other words, The Calling Las Vegas had the potential to make or break the reputation and perhaps even the future of Flesh and Blood. Well, I personally attended so that I could see for myself with my own eyes, and while there are still 3 more major events in the USA that will soon be held in Dallas-Fort Worth, Cincinnati, and Orlando, Florida, this is what I saw in Las Vegas. I arrived in Las Vegas late Thursday evening. The event itself would not begin until the next morning, but something struck me before the event even began, right there in the hotel lobby. It was filled with people playing, practicing Flesh and Blood. Now, people filling the lobby at events like this is nothing new. Every GP I ever attended would find the nearby hotel lobbies filled during late-night hours with people jamming games. But I had entertained a deeply concerning notion about The Calling Vegas, and that was, what if everyone is just there playing Magic the Gathering? It's no secret that Magic the Gathering players have been longing for a GP-like event. I knew many Magic the Gathering players and creators were expressing interest in The Calling Vegas, so I worried, what if they just used this event as an excuse to hang out in Vegas with friends and get games of Magic the Gathering and not Flesh and Blood? I felt very deeply that if this were the case, it would be a huge mark against the game. In other words, people are gathering at one of its major events, but not to play Flesh and Blood, to play something else like Magic. But that wasn't happening. In fact, I didn't see a single table of people playing any game other than Flesh and Blood. No Commander, no Pokemon, just Blitz and classic constructed games of Flesh and Blood being held in the hotel lobby the night before this big event. I knew then and there that The Calling Las Vegas would hold nothing but positives for the game and for my impression of the game's community. And I was right. From the moment I walked into the hall Friday morning until I departed for the last time Sunday evening, I saw one thing and one thing only: people playing Flesh and Blood. The hall was packed from the start, with nearly 1,000 people signed up for the premier pre-release event of Tales of Aria. In fact, more people registered for the pre-release event than the main event by about 100, so I hear. That's because this pre-release is such a cool idea. Previews for the set had only just ended the day before, and LSS had kept a few extra things secret about the set. The result of having the pre-release there at The Calling was that all of us there in that event would be the very first in the entire world to crack open first edition packs of Tales of Aria and then sit down to play pre-release. It was just amazing. I hope that becomes a new staple for sets to come. I'll never forget that inevitable moment that came when the very first person, as in the very first person ever, right there a few feet away from all of us, opened up a fabled cold foil and held it up like Excalibur. Moans and gasps were quickly eclipsed by applause of the whole hall, cheering in that moment. I cannot tell you what it felt like to be a part of it. The air was vibing with positivity of the collective community just having a joyful experience together. I'm not doing it justice. A brilliant, electric-like experience for all those in the hall. So with just under 1,000 people signed up for the event, and I imagine the attendance of those just there in the hall getting side event games and other casual gameplay made it higher, and I have no doubt in my mind that had the Delta variant not happened, had we completely cleared this pandemic up last spring, then attendance would have been double, no question, possibly even triple. So I think it's time to stop with the ridiculous claims that no one plays this game. If you hear someone say, "Well, I've never actually seen anyone play this game," then show them this. 1,000 or so people playing all weekend long. And I have heard game store after game store is seeing its attendance for Flesh and Blood events increase. And to the next person that says it'll last a year, I think you can remind them it's already lasted 2. Now, there are problems with this game. For example, they just had to ban Duskblade from the newest set, a preemptive strike that you never want to see happen for myriad reasons. Their Living Legends system was proven to need an overhaul, and thankfully it received one, but it may need further tweaking. And of course, the cost of game pieces, the cost of cards, is an issue, and it is one that maybe will get worse with time. So this is far from a perfect game, but it is a game with a player base, and that player base is growing. And I think after this weekend, it is very fair for me to declare the player base has taken root. It's there. One final fascinating detail on that. As I walked around the tournament hall that weekend and met literally hundreds of players, I often remarked with, "This feels just like being back at a GP, doesn't it?" To which the overwhelming majority of people replied, "What's that?" To my surprise, the vast majority of people that I met were not former Magic the Gathering players investigating a new game, but new players altogether, who had discovered Flesh and Blood through other avenues. They were new players in the literal sense, new to the TCG scene, and many of them had never been to an event like this before. No wonder there was such magic in the air. Criticism is critical to a game, but I hope going forward that commentators at least offer legitimate criticism, and that is what I am going to try and do with mine in future videos. Stop with this nonsense of, "It's not going to last." Well, it has lasted. It's still here, still growing, and short of an epic screw-up from the company that makes it, I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. But those are just my impressions of what I saw firsthand and what I imagine going into the future for this game is going to be like. And there are, of course, still 3 more major events taking place in the US this year at The Calling Cincinnati, Dallas-Fort Worth, and Orlando, Florida. So let me know your thoughts. Were you at The Calling Vegas? Do you agree or disagree with my assessment? Do you plan on going to any of those other events? If you have criticisms with the game that are legitimate criticisms, I, as a critic, am very interested to hear your thoughts. And remember, criticism can take both a positive and negative form, so be sure to let me know in the comments below. And whether it's for Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Digimon, MetaZoo, or Flesh and Blood, or myriad other games, remember, it is a game. It's about having fun, making friends, and getting a distraction, a joy in this life. If you're doing that, no matter what you're playing, you're doing it right.